Hello everyone, welcome back to Reading with Raptors. We are live here in our program room here on site in the St. Paul campus. I am here with one of our resident American Kestrels who we call Sienna, after that kind of nice brown kind of stripy coloring. We'll see. I'll see if I can kind of turn around a little bit so you can see her kind of the stripes on her belly that are really kind of indicative of what we generally think of as a female American Kestrel. One of the few raptors, of course, that have some kind of different colorations between males and females. So she has a nice kind of brown and black stripes, and you'll see if she turns, you can kind of see some nice kind of dusty stripes on her chest and belly, whereas the males tend to have that kind of brighter blue color with lots more kind of polka dot kind of style markings on their bellies. So you might see some different looking American Kestrels if you are out and about here, really across most of North America. This time of year is really great for seeing them. I know I see them a lot if I'm out in kind of big open grassy areas or driving out to a state park or something like that where I'm kind of out in more rural areas. I'll usually see them hovering and hunting kind of near those big open ditches kind of on the side of the road, over farming fields, meadows, prairie grasslands, places like that. That's where I'm normally seeing them. So just wanted to point that out while we're taking a look. We can see that excellent kind of detail in her feather coloring. If you are seeing a male, you might see a very similar looking raptor. It looks a little bit different in terms of color. That might be what you're looking at. I also have a little spray bottle here that we can give her a little bit of a mist bath, see if she is interested in taking a little bit of a bath. It's cooled down a little bit here in Minnesota compared to the last couple of weeks where it's been really toasty. It's gonna get warm again, so a lot of birds have been taking a lot of showers. I know we recently posted at least one video of a bird getting a big kind of hose shower bath. But today we actually have a book that's a little bit more related to the other kind of main spring and even early summer activity. This is a book that a volunteer actually brought in that I think this particular book has been around for a bit, but I really liked the variety of animals that it had in here, and I really liked the artwork on it. So this is, I'm just going to cover up because there's a little label on here from the volunteer that this belongs to, so I'm just going to cover that up since it has her address on it. This is called Chickens Aren't the Only Ones by Ruth Heller, and so it's got these like really delightful illustrations on here. I'm going to be talking about eggs and egg laying. We're still kind of in that time of year. We're still seeing lots of those young raptors coming into the Raptor Center, seeing lots of youngsters. So most of them at this point, at least here in Minnesota, most of those youngsters have hatched out of their eggs already, but there are still plenty of birds who are out incubating nests. And as we're going to read in this book, this is something that a lot of different kinds of animals produce eggs and have youngsters that are hatching out of eggs. So we're gonna read a bit about them. But right away here in this book, I really enjoyed this illustration, this nice kind of chicken and egg pattern, which I think is really fun. So, chickens lay the eggs you buy. Here's a rooster and a couple of hens. So chickens lay the eggs you buy. The eggs you boil or fry. Here are these eggs with, looks like these ones have been hard boiled with those yummy yolks. So the eggs you boil or fry or dye or leave alone so you can see what grew inside naturally. So here we have some nice beautiful dyed eggs, those amazing colors and patterns. And here, of course, we have a fluffy chicken chick. That might result from chicken eggs if those chickens have been living with a rooster at least. Normally not the case for the eggs that most of us get. So some people have backyard chickens or farming chickens, things like that. However, chickens aren't the only ones. Here we have some peafowl. We have the male, of course, with that beautiful big train of feathers, and the female with the kind of nice, kind of more subtle colors to better hide and blend in. You can see them over their little clutch of eggs. So chickens aren't the only ones. Here we have a huge variety of birds. It says every bird, wild or, but here is, I'll kind of zoom in on these. This is an amazing variety of birds. We have a toucan up here. This looks like some sort of egret or something, or a heron with that long pointy beak. Some kind of eagle maybe. This is a grebe down here, little water bird. Penguin and a puffin. We have maybe a pelican or stork, something like that, a big crane, guinea fowl, we have a pheasant, a couple of different, here's a pigeon, a very large pigeon. We have some other kind of a fancy, looks like either a wood duck or a mandarin duck, depending on the colors. Lots of different birds. So every bird, wild or tame, does the same. So we have turkeys, we have swans, we have ducks, we have pigeons, birds that people also raise on farms, oftentimes for their eggs. So every bird, wild or tame, does the same. Here it says, the ostrich lays the largest egg, the hummingbird the smallest. So you have a big variety of kind of different colors of eggs, the big fluffy ostrich in the background. So we have that giant ostrich egg compared to the teeny tiny hummingbird egg. Chickens aren't the only ones. Most snakes lay eggs, and lizards too, and crocodiles and turtles do. So here we have a snake with their kind of oval, they're kind of almost squared off kind of eggs, really unusual shape. There's some lizards with their long tails running around. Here we have a crocodile with a little baby crocodile coming out of that kind of leathery egg, and a turtle. The other day I was out on a walk and I saw a turtle laying her eggs right next to the side of a path. She had dug down kind of right off of the sidewalk, and this was near a park. She had dug down into it, and we were actually watching her laying her eggs into a hole that she dug. And then afterwards, we didn't watch her until she was done. We wanted to leave her alone and give her some space. But afterwards, she was gonna kind of cover it back up, cover up the dirt and the mud, so that those eggs could stay safe under the ground while they were finishing growing. So we just saw a turtle laying those eggs. Dinosaurs, who are extinct, but they were reptiles too. So dinosaurs also laid eggs. So here we have some dinosaurs. Here's one coming out of an egg. Kind of nice hard-shelled egg, kept them safe on land. Frogs and toads and salamanders lay eggs, and when they hatch, they're tadpoles who grow legs and climb a lily pad just like their mom and dad. They don't have claws or scaly skins. They are called amphibians. So here we have frogs. We have the life cycle of the frog. This is the kind of egg that amphibians lay. It's not hard. If you've ever had a chance to see frog eggs out in the wild or even touch them before, they're kind of gooey almost. They kind of have like almost like jelly-like kind of texture to them. They hatch into these little tadpoles that eventually grow legs and lose their tails to become those frogs and toads that we get to see hopping around during the summer. Same thing over here with, this is salamanders. Also have these little eggs that they lay. They kind of grow up the same way with that kind of tadpole-like kind of stage. And then here are those salamanders you might see crawling out of kind of creeks or riverbeds. Trying to square this off. Here we go. Fish eggs float up to the surface or sink to the bottom of the ocean floor. So here's this beautiful, colorful variety of fish. All of these different fish have different ways of laying their eggs. Some of them will release them up to the surface. Some of them will lay their eggs and attach them to different pieces of kind of debris floating through the ocean. Maybe a limb of a coconut tree fell off and has kind of made its way out into the ocean. Maybe there's a piece of driftwood floating around. All sorts of things. Or they might go down to the bottom of the ocean and let their eggs sit there. This mother seahorse lays her eggs into the father's pouch. He keeps them there until they hatch, and then he's through. I think that's nice of him, don't you? These fathers too are helping out by guarding eggs protected by this foamy mass that's floating by. And they won't leave until they're sure that all the eggs have hatched. So here we have the seahorses here. And then, so there's a little pouch kind of right along the kind of the belly of the male seahorse that'll use to kind of keep those eggs nice and safe until they're hatching. And then these look like betta fish. So they kind of create this big mat of bubbles that they'll lay their eggs in and kind of keep them floating near the surface. And they'll keep guard using those big flashy colors to warn off other fish and kind of drive them away. So doing a very good job protecting those eggs. So this here, these don't look like eggs to me, but they were laid in the sea. This one by a shark. This one by a ray is a mermaid's purse, they say. It's kind of a kind of fun nickname for this type of eggs that sharks and rays lay. They look like a mermaid's purse. It's kind of like this strange, kind of almost, when they dry out, they feel like a hard plastic, but kind of underwater, this kind of like leathery, almost, they look like seaweed. You could see them blending in with some of the kind of plants that live on the kind of bottom of the ocean floor, keeps them safe. So here are those sharks and those rays that might lay these very fancy eggs that sit down at the bottom of the ocean until they are ready to hatch. The octopus is said to shed 100,000 eggs and then to hang them up in strings attached to rocks or caves. The moon snail's eggs are mixed with sand to form this collar-looking band. So we have the octopus, you'll often see, will kind of go into a nice little cave area and lay these strands of eggs. They look like little decorations or like little flowers hanging from the ceiling or the roof of that little cave area. And then oftentimes the female will sit there and kind of circulate the water around to make sure that there's a lot of good oxygen flowing around those eggs so they can breathe. Well, the teeny tiny baby octopuses inside are getting plenty of the oxygen that they need. And moon snails create this kind of collar shape around them, kind of keep them safe and kind of carry them around with them. The moon snail. Spiders wrap their eggs in sacks, and snails, you know, are very slow, but they lay eggs that hatch and grow. So here we have a spider who's made this beautiful web and then created this little kind of egg sac here out of web to kind of keep those youngsters safe while they're growing up inside. And then the snail has laid eggs, and you can see the tiny eggs with the teeny tiny snails coming out. Right behind us here, I'll try to keep the book away from it being in front of her. You can see our American kestrel is doing some preening or some feather care. She's working on keeping those feathers nice and tidy. She's probably gonna rouse and kind of fluff them all out. Very nice. Keeping all those feathers nice and tidy and clean. Here we have, oh, beautiful variety here. We have insects who have 6 legs and lay many different kinds of eggs. This one here will hatch into a hungry caterpillar who will grow and grow and grow and then climb up a stem and change into this, a chrysalis, and change again one summer morn. I'll finish the rest of the sentence before we go to the next page. But here we have this amazing variety of insects, one of the largest group of animals in the world who has tons of different varieties. We have bees, we have butterflies, we have moths, we have, looks like a grasshopper. Here's a praying mantis. Here's little mites. Here are even more kind of butterfly moths, dragonflies, grasshoppers, all sorts of different insects. But here you could see the path of, here's a little caterpillar egg. Here's a little caterpillar kind of growing out. Here, climbing up a stem and then turning into this chrysalis or the pupa. But we call it a chrysalis on butterflies and moths. And this is what it will kind of grow into, that beautiful butterfly. So it says chrysalis and change again one summer morn. That's how ... That's how a butterfly is born. So you can see, I believe this is a swallowtail butterfly. These beautiful blue flowers after it's hatched out of that egg, transformed into a caterpillar who's eaten lots and lots of food for energy, went into that chrysalis and transformed into a butterfly. Animals with fur or hair who nurse their young and don't lay eggs are known as mammals or mammalia. Here is the spiny anteater, and this is the duckbill platypus. But these are two exceptions, and they both live in Australia. So both of these animals are actually mammals like us and like cats and dogs or horses or cows, those kinds of animals who don't lay eggs. They have live birth, or they kind of have babies that they don't hatch out of eggs, they give birth to. But these two kinds of mammals actually lay eggs, platypus and the spiny anteaters. They live in Australia. I know there's also some species, some related to the spiny anteaters that live in like Papua New Guinea, that kind of island area. Chickens aren't the only ones. There's no more to discuss. Everyone who lays an egg is oviparous. Sorry, that's a really delightful rhyme. Oviparous means an animal that lays eggs. So here are all these different types of animals that lay eggs, all the way from hummingbirds to spiders to butterflies to the platypus to dinosaurs and frogs and fish, all sorts of different animals that are oviparous, that lay eggs, all the way over to octopuses, wasps and bees, all sorts of different animals. That is the last page. Oh, there's one more. Animals who don't lay eggs have babies born alive and well, but that's another tale to tell. So here is, look like a cat with 3 little kittens. Did not hatch out of eggs. It'd be a very different world, I think, if we all hatched out of eggs. And then here on the last page, we have more of this fun chicken and egg pattern. So that has been Chickens Aren't the Only Ones by Ruth Heller. I just really enjoyed all of the kind of drawings in that one of all the different kinds of animals and the huge variety and types of different animals that are oviparous or egg laying. If you want to know the name for like us mammals who have kind of live birth, we don't lay eggs kind of in the meantime, we're called viviparous, which is kind of a way of saying that like babies come out and they're ready to go. They are not inside of an egg at all. So chickens aren't the only ones. So I like thinking about this time of year because we have so many young birds kind of coming in and out of the Raptor Center. We can see a lot of youngsters out and about. Right now, I think pretty much all of the raptors, at least here in the upper Midwest, I think all of them at this point will have hatched out, maybe a few straggling kind of American kestrels or maybe some of our very far northern species. But for the most part, as we get into middle of June, most of them have actually hatched out of their eggs already and are now kind of growing up, still being cared for by their parents. There might be some other songbirds though, generally like the American goldfinch, for example, usually lays eggs pretty late in the game and actually will probably lay a second clutch later this summer. So we might have a couple who are still kind of in eggs, incubating as we get into these warmer summer temperatures. Somebody was saying, one morning I found a male kestrel on my fence. So somebody's actually seeing these American kestrels outside, sounds like in your yard, which is amazing. A lot of times we see American kestrels living in those kind of nice open areas, lots of kind of grassy spaces. So if you live near kind of a nice woodlot area, big park, kind of prairie grasslands, I'll actually also see them as it gets not quite in the middle of the city, but kind of out a little ways into the suburbs. I'll actually see them in those kind of water retaining pond kind of areas that you'll often see near kind of larger like shopping centers or fitness centers where there's kind of big open grassy spaces. They're often able to find a good amount of food living there, those kind of big overgrown kind of nice prairie open spaces. You'll find a lot of small mice and grasshoppers and small birds, big dragonflies, especially this time of year, we've got dragonflies all over the place. So lots of great food for our American kestrels. So great time of year to be keeping an eye out for them. I will also say it's also a great time to keep an eye out for if you like to watch nest cams. A lot of times people watch them for birds, bigger birds like bald eagles and red-tailed hawks. But right now the American kestrel nest cams are really hopping. So they've got lots of kind of fluffy youngsters in them. So definitely keep an eye out for those. My favorite, of course, you can always find on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Has some really great ones on there. They post a lot of updates too. I'm just giving her a little kind of spritz, see if she's interested in. Now she's doing some cleaning of her face. There's a little bit of kind of schmutz on her wing that I was trying to help her get off to be able to do that. One thing I'll actually point out, because she's done it a couple of times now, when she is using her talons to kind of itch at her face or to kind of clear off those feathers on her face, you might notice that she's using kind of her middle talon. She's got her three toes here. She's using that middle one to kind of like scratch at her face. That talon actually has a special little grooming ridge on it. And so that's when you watch birds scratch at their faces or kind of play with their feathers on their face, they'll use that middle talon to do it. So that's what has that special little grooming ridge. We have an update from the person who saw the kestrel earlier. He was eating a sparrow. Great source of food for American kestrels. We have lots of sparrows, again, all throughout the upper Midwest and most of North America. We have lots of different species of sparrows, those really small, fluffy kind of songbirds that we see and hear a lot of. So lots of really great food for them as well. There we go. Doing some good cleaning. I'll point out too, as I'm kind of finishing spraying her, she's showing us the back. That kind of brown and black stripy pattern is what you'll see on these female American kestrels, that kind of nice brown or sienna color. The males tend to have the more kind of bluish gray wings, and then on their fronts they have more of the polka dots instead of the stripes. So if you're keeping an eye out for American kestrels, you can actually kind of tell the difference. And for these smaller raptors, they live about anywhere from 5 to 10 years out in the wild. And so they don't really go through that kind of juvenile or teenager phase as much as other raptors do, who might have kind of different colors for their first year. Those young American kestrels, we're gonna see some excellent natural behavior here. Excellent, great view of an American kestrel eliminating some waste. But those American kestrels, they actually get those kind of color differences right away that first year. So I always really enjoy watching those nest cameras because you can see kind of, okay, looks like we have 2 males and 3 females in this nest, which is really fun to see those kind of colors coming in as they're growing in their first set of feathers. So right now, a lot of our local American kestrels are still in the very fuzzy stage, growing in their first set of flight feathers, and then they'll be learning how to fly and hunt from their parents for the rest of the summer. So probably fledging here pretty soon. I also was lately been watching some of our other kind of young raptors. We were just, last night I was watching some baby barred owls near me. There's a kind of a wood lot with little ponds that they usually will hunt in. And so we were watching them, and they mostly had all of their feathers. There was one in particular who looked like probably the youngest of the bunch, who was really fluffy but still had most of the flight feathers. So they were kind of starting to move around. So now's a really good time to be kind of keeping eyes and ears out for young raptors who are starting to make their first kind of flight, still should be learning from their parents how to fly, how to hunt, all of that. But kind of keeping an eye out for them, see if you can spot any. And of course, this time of year is also when we see some of those youngsters getting into a bit of trouble, falling out of trees. As they start to learn how to hunt and fly, they might run into things. So if you do find any injured youngsters or youngsters that you think might be in need of help, if you're here in the Minnesota area, you can give the Raptor Center a call before you pick them up. We want to make sure that we can kind of assess the situation, see if they even need help. A lot of times these baby raptors, they might get into a little bit of trouble, but they've been getting into a bit of trouble for generations and generations. So for the most part, things work out pretty well on their own. But if they do need help, we would love to see them here to make sure that they get the best start to life that they can, so you can get them back out into the wild safe and healthy. If you live in other areas, you can definitely check out your local wildlife rehabilitation centers if you're a little bit far away for you. So you can check that out to see if they're able to help you figure out if a baby raptor needs help. Same thing goes for a lot of our other baby wildlife out there. A lot of times we see youngsters, we really want to help them out, but oftentimes they are A-okay out on their own. So definitely before you pick up any young wildlife that you think might need help, give a call to a local licensed rehabilitator, wildlife scientist expert, who's able to help kind of figure out if that animal needs help or not. And then we can get it to the right people. For here in Minnesota, that's the Raptor Center for Raptors or the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Roseville, who takes every other kind of wildlife. But for anyone else who's further away from Minnesota area, you can check out your local DNR conservation officers. That kind of resource is usually a great way to find out who's the best for helping out baby animals in your area. So I think that was all of the kind of comments. Somebody has had a very exciting time watching the male American kestrel near them. Otherwise, this has been Sienna, the American kestrel. Been doing a great job of demonstrating kind of feather care, keeping a little bit cool during the summertime with a little bit of extra water, cooling off a little bit. You can also see, since she is turned around, I will point out the very long kind of pointy wing shape that these American kestrels have that's really typical for falcons. A very long pointy wing and very long narrow tail here is really important for falcons. They have the very kind of long pointy wings, great for building up speed and changing directions. Actually, on the tablecloth behind me, you can see a picture of a peregrine falcon who's got that very long kind of pointed wing shape. So that's what these wings look like when they're kind of outstretched. Perfect for really building up that high speed, changing directions, really great for hunting things in midair. Like American kestrels are looking for small birds, grasshoppers, dragonflies. Peregrine falcons might be looking for other birds. So really great at building up that speed, changing directions with a very long pointy wing. While she's turned on, you can probably actually guess why this particular bird lives with us. She's actually missing those pointy feathers on one side. Not really sure exactly what happened, but when she was brought in, she was actually missing the very end of her wing where those long pointy flight feathers grow from. So since she's not able to regrow those, she's not able to fly well enough on her own to live out in the wild. So that is why she is an educator here at the Raptor Center. So if you want to find out more about what Sienna here, what our other birds are up to, and kind of our plans for both kind of general opening back up for here on site, as well as our off-site programs and our online activities and programs, you can check us out. We're here on Facebook at the Raptor Center, as you're hopefully on our page already. You can also find us on Instagram. We're at the Raptor Center. And then we're also online at theraptorcenter.org. So you can find out more information about what we're up to, what all the birds are up to, and get some great updates on those young raptors coming into the clinic, all of that kind of stuff. You can check us out at those places and keep an eye on all the stuff that we have going on. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today as we observed a little Miss bath for an American kestrel and read about different kinds of oviparous or egg-laying animals. We will see you all next week for more Reading with Raptors. Have a great week, everybody.